Good Wednesday morning. It's 10 a.m. on the East Coast. And welcome to another coffee break chat. We've got a lot of subjects to cover today. Sorry if my broadcast is a little glitchy today. I'm broadcasting from an unusual location, and doesn't appear that my connection is as good as it could be. So we have a few drop frames, but we'll continue to move right along. Joining me here is Tina Brock. Welcome, Tina. If you would please introduce yourself and your pronouns and what it is you do.
I'm Tina Brock, she, her. I'm the producing director at which is a
16-year-old theater company dedicated to absurdist and existentialist theater.
Awesome. Sorry, you were a little bit sorry for the audio problem there.
Low.
You didn't notice it, but my listeners probably noticed it. So just one more time, please.
Yeah, I'm Tina Brock. Pronouns she, her. I am the producing artistic director at the Idiopathic Ridiculopathy Consortium, which is a theater founded in 2006. Mission is absurdist and existentialist, and authors from mid-20th century and up until now.
Awesome. And are you joining us for any specific project that you have coming up, or just joining us to chat?
Well, I'm mainly joining to talk. We have a weekly, similar to this, conversation that happens on Saturdays at 5 on Zoom, which is, focused on illuminating, getting to know people in the community and around the country, really, and the work that they're doing, both in the arts community and in many aspects of the world, thinking creatively and trying to get through very existentially challenging times.
Awesome. Well, shortly we should have Anita Holland joining us, who's going to be keeping an eye on the PPD's budget hearings today. So, have you heard much about that? Do you know what I'm talking about there? I think we've discussed it briefly before here and there, but I don't know how much everybody knows about the PPD budget hearings.
Yeah, I haven't been paying close attention.
So, Philadelphia City Council actually passed and signed into law a comment period, public comment period, that's to happen before the Philadelphia Police Department's budget negotiations, contract negotiations with the city itself. And those contract negotiations happen in January, and this being the first time that anybody's done this, the public hearings are happening today. So it's a public comment period. People are allowed to give testimony with regard to what they know of the PPD and what they feel how they feel the budget hearing should, or how the budget should be assigned. And being a city council hearing, it's actually public record and available to watch live. And we have a reporter that's going to be watching live and reporting to us as the hearings go on. So that's what's going on with that. The FOP has been a little bit angry about the fact that this got passed into law, and have been railing on about it a little bit with, of course, our FOP president, John McNesby. I don't know. I don't know, like, how he continues to maintain a hold on the FOP like he has. It's actually a little crazy to me. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull up our video of City Council and see if their hearings are being broadcast already. So yeah, Mr. McNesby is always railing against any loss of power for the FOP, and he considers this public comment period a direct assault on his domain, I guess. So it is what it is. So yeah, so the council hearings are actually live right now, and I will add those to our broadcast so people can see them. But let's see, what else are we talking about today? And I don't know if I don't know what happened to my invite. My normal folks didn't respond to my invite. I might have messed up the invite, but we'll figure it out. So, yeah, that's what's going on with that today.
And Anita's there reporting?
Yeah, she's watching the broadcast, and she should be jumping in here and reporting shortly. So let me pull up that broadcast for the viewers. What was that?
Oh, was that sort of ship horn?
Yeah.
That was probably my email. Let me. Sounds like a freighter. Let's see if I can turn that off.
All right, there's the ongoing broadcast. I'll just bring that up. And feel free to tune in to the broadcast and have the volume up in your own computer for those who are watching. Yeah, so that's what's going on this morning. There's that, and I'm going to just text Meg real quick and Anita and see if we can get Anita on the line. Let me see how I can get in touch with Anita. Great. So yeah, so that's all happening this morning. Have you been watching any of the stuff going on in DC or around the country with the various I don't want to call them protests. Not really protests of anything. It's a bunch of white nationalists displaying hatred, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I've been paying attention more nationally to the impediment to getting the new administration into their seats, and saw a little bit of what was happening in Washington, which by two different accounts seemed to be much smaller than what was purported to be, but also yet had fair amount of aggression attached to it.
Yeah, there were various threats to life going on. Several people towards the end of it was billed as the Million MAGA March. Crowd estimates by the Secret Service and others put the crowd at around 10,000. And the interesting thing was that after dark, obviously things started to get a little wild, as it were. People being assaulted and people having difficulty with maintaining their own safety, and the police department, the DC police, seemed to do nothing about it. On our Twitter channel, I even highlighted several examples of the DC police, for instance, pulling down Black Lives Matter posters and information that was on a fence around a church, and the church had actually said that stuff could be on that fence, and were upset that got removed. And then the DC police simply just removed it. So it was a little questionable, as it were. And then, of course, with the DC police not doing anything to curb the normal unrest that was happening, it's just such a departure from what was happening previous weeks with protests against the president, protests against other folks, and it was just weird, I think.
The departure, you mean in the way they responded to it?
Yeah.
The way the police responded to it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think that's about?
Well, I mean, I think it's about racism, but I may be a bit jaded about that. Yeah.
But what accounts for the change,
Well, there's obviously, a bit of a political leaning amongst police departments across the country, and that that change.
Yeah. Right.
Is reflected in how they deal with protests and how they deal with protesters. I don't know.
From the time before he was elected, or before he was, the change being like the difference before the election and after. Or even from.
I don't think it had anything to do
after
with
the election.
I think it had to do with just who they are in general. Even before the election of Trump, the police departments were the same, and who they supported and what they were doing. Hey Anita, I see you've joined us. I just wanted to briefly welcome you and introduce you. If you would give your name, your pronouns, and let us know what you do.
My name is Anita Holland. My pronouns are all, and I am an artist in many forms. A lot of people in the Philadelphia community would know me through theater and dance. And today I'm here in a pseudo court reporter capacity.
Yep.
Also activist, so human.
I think we've gotten to the point in life where it's not possible to not be an activist any longer.
True. Every breath is a protest.
Yeah, every breath is a protest. We have the Committee of the Whole hearing also being streamed on screen. Feel free to jump in if you hear or see any testimony that is important to us, and or feel free to jump in with commentary of anything if you would like. Well, and welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My capacity is a little bit split, so I'll be paying mostly attention to the hearings, and then I'll probably pop in the chat. Hi, Tina. It's nice to see you.
Hi. Good to see you again, Anita.
Yeah. All right. As you were.
Talking about the.
Yeah, we were just talking about police departments and not necessarily how they're reacting to things in the post-election, how they're reacting to folks' protests and stuff like that. Yeah, so like I was saying, I don't think it's a new interaction. I think it's just how police departments have always been. I think that they, John McNesby is a good example. I hate to keep harping on the same person, but a perfect example of, we live in what's considered by most outsiders a very progressive city, and yet we have an FOP president who refuses to acknowledge the existence of and ultimate power of the office of the mayor, who's the executive in our city government, and refuses to acknowledge the police commissioner, who ostensibly is the head of the police department in our city government, and takes that power for himself, issuing directives and opinions directly to the members of the FOP, and expecting them to be followed by the FOP. Yeah. So it's an interesting conundrum. I'm not sure exactly what we can do. I'm hoping through this testimony that folks, help City Council to recognize that problem, and help City Council figure out a way to negotiate a contract with the PPD that will, and the FOP, that will lower the amount of influence that the head of the FOP has over the police department itself. The police department needs to be an organization that answers to the executive branch of the government, not the other way around. And even though they're civilians empowered with arrest powers and the right to carry guns, and they need to answer to civilian authority rather than being the de facto authority, which is what they've been for most of the time that I've lived in Philadelphia. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know if there was ever a time when they weren't considered, like a de facto authority like they are now. But they are definitely so now. Also, there's all the new COVID-19 restrictions I wanted to talk about. So those are a concern. Folks should be definitely considerate of everybody. And it's strange because we live in a country where there's all this information available to all of us all the time, and I don't understand what's creating this disconnect for folks where they can't follow simple guidelines to remain socially distant, remain in groups that they always associate with, so that to random vectors for infection. I mean, it seems relatively easy to me. I don't,
But, I mean, when you've got people in ERs and ICUs who are refusing to accept the fact that they are in very, advanced stages of the illness, it definitely is another mindset.
I heard about that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's,
I didn't see it directly. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I haven't seen this
yeah,
thing
I didn't
directly.
see the footage of it, but I heard the audio where they were in, it was out, I'm not exactly sure which city it was, but out west, where they had people really sick and who were just flat out not accepting the fact that COVID was the reason for it. I mean, on ventilators and in pretty dire condition. So the idea being, I don't know what the mindset is. Either we're just not accepting it's a thing, and I'm not sure whether the outset of it was they believed it was something else, but that's a hard one to wrangle when you're not, it's reality versus, well, is the earth flat? Is the earth round? I mean, how do you deal with that? Really, like, and can you imagine being someone whose life is on the line, who's put their life on the line since, March, to get us to this point? I mean, that's a philosophical dilemma. I think if you're working as a healthcare worker and your job is to, not that the job becomes any different, but I think being on the same page about the thing you're trying to do is so important. And yet it's just, is it political for reasons that we're not accepting it? Is it anger about the election? What is the thing? Like so many of the questions I think that we ask about, why isn't it possible to have a smooth transition of power? This is something that is like fundamental to our democracy, and it affects so many other aspects of the world security and just all of those issues. So I think, it's a number of issues, but that's got to be very dissonant to be working in an ER or working in an ICU and not really kind of be able to have a conversation directly about the thing that's happening.
Well, yeah,
You know?
yeah, and I think it is possible to have a peaceful transition of power. Um, I think that there are there are large portions of the government just literally avoiding it for some reason. I can't and it's the
Gosh,
same, with folks avoiding the fact that they're dying of COVID. You're dying of COVID, okay. I don't think it's COVID. It's pneumonia or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
sorry.
It doesn't matter on one hand what.
Right. Um, Anita's just letting us know that some testimony has actually begun, and on the lower part of the screen, folks can see
Mhm.
the PowerPoint that's being presented by the Committee of the Whole right now. So, yeah, feel free to read that as the
Mhm.
broadcast continues. Anything important going on, Anita?
Not necessarily yet. I think right now the interest arbitration and I think like negotiations that they're trying to pose. So this is like the public testimony has started, but it's currently from the police's point of view. That's
Awesome.
all.
Thank you. So yeah, I question how long do you think it's going to take for us to get back to a point where, basic facts, basic knowledge, accepted reality is just what everybody's willing to deal in and be based on?
Mhm. I don't know. I feel like it's such a hard question to answer. I know I've because hard question to answer from the standpoint of, I think some of the actions that have happened in the last certainly 4 years, but most recently with the election and since then, are just hard to fathom that you would ever be in a position where the fundamental rules of law and just the things that hold us up as a democracy and make it possible for us to have conversations about the issues that need to be solved. I mean, if you're busy wrangling over whether the margin of win for the election was enough, or whether you're arguing over things that traditionally have been accepted, and even something like a concession where you don't have to concede, but psychologically it's an important thing, I think, for us to be all operating under the same set of guidelines. Not that we have to think the same or come to the table the same, but there does need to be a baseline. This is kind of where we're at, and
well, yeah,
it's
I mean, it's
the
a matter of reality versus, and there's as theater makers, we all deal with this constantly in making theater. There's a base of shared experience, and you can't really have a show, a theater piece, without recognizing the base of shared experience, the reality that we all live in. When you try and create a show that flies against reality, it's just not accepted. It's not well reviewed. People can't follow it. You can't follow a concept that you have no link into, and so I'm wondering how we seem to be creating these split realities here in America, where there's a whole group of people that seems to have a different base reality than the rest of us,
well, it does seem to provide, what's interesting to me is to watch journalism and how one covers that thing, because a fair amount of time has to be spent on recognizing it and saying, hey, this has not been recognized as reality, whether it's on Twitter or whatever. They don't say reality, but this has not been recognized as a fact, or this has not been recognized, because so much of the time is spent on just trying to fact check and get us all on the same stage, the same playing field, to be able to say, okay, here's what we're talking about today, rather than being able to talk about the issues that really are in front of us. And that's been fascinating and disturbing to watch journalism and how reporters and people are writing on it, like where they put their focus to this sort of daily trajectory of recognizing what's reality and what's not.
I mean, and that's
how much of the day are we going to spend?
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good segue into something that I was just seeing on Twitter this morning, which is, the Washington Post wrote an article. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. But, basically, I'm sorry, I remember the topic now. So the Washington Post wrote an article about how the Illinois Election Commission, which is half Democrat, half Republican, 4 members, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and how the Republican members of the Election Commission were arguing to not certify the results of the election. And the Democrats had to make concessions to get them to certify the election results, and so that the electors could be nominated, and we could continue with our very weird, but whatever, it's worked for a couple hundred years, system of having electors elect the president instead of the popular vote. So these folks had to make the concession of advising the election commission that advising a judge that they wanted a very thorough investigation done after certifying the results, but they still want a very thorough investigation per their objections, and all the writing, not only is that, like, okay, great, you want an investigation done, and so you're living in this reality where there needs to be an investigation when there's no evidence of fraud whatsoever, and then all the writing was parsed in this very neutral way, where if you aren't aware of the counties and the cities that they're talking about, you don't realize that they're specifically talking about disenfranchising black voters. They're talking about destroying the votes of black voters specifically, because all of the counties and cities that they weren't willing to recognize the vote count from, the vote total from, were majority black. And that wasn't even brought into the conversation.
Was this that Chicago was the city, right, where they were trying to get them to throw out the votes? This is what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Where, yeah. Well, I don't know. And when did we get to the place where this was even? Look at all. I mean, when you look at just all the lawsuits that are frivolous, that aren't backed up by, I don't know if frivolous is the right word, but certainly don't have legal weight to them, right, that just continue to be presented and taking up time and taking up energy and taking up space. When did we start allowing that to happen?
Well, I suppose we started allowing it to happen really back in the Florida recount days, Bush v. Gore. We had that whole multi-month long wait for.
Right, but that seemed to be based on something,
yeah,
right? As opposed to.
But it's like any other thing. You erode the norms that have existed, and this is also my concern with how long is it going to take to recover from a Trump presidency. You erode the norms that have existed for generations. You don't accept the results. You go after the opponent in court. Well, now suddenly that's the normal thing to do, to go after. And now you have, and I would call them frivolous. I think that to their credit, the judges that are hearing these cases are calling them frivolous. And, they're saying, hey, there's no there there. There's nothing here. Why are you trying to bring this case before me that means nothing?
Yeah, I think the damage to the psychology for all the reasons you just mentioned, that we spend all of this time just trying to figure out if our feet are on the ground, just as citizens, on okay, today's a new day, we're going to move forward, let me pay attention to what's happening locally, nationally, to be able to sort of understand all of these big issues that are on the horizon that need to be solved. And yet a lot of the day gets spent on, what's he going to do today?
Yeah.
Which I just don't ever remember living in that world before.
I think some of the problem, so to speak, has really keyed off in the area of we need to cover this because it's the president. At the same time, even during the first election, news was saying his name more than any other opponent and any other candidate, because that's his real specialty, is doing things so I don't know, so wild.
I mean, right, questionable and reality TV stuff.
Yeah,
or that's what it feels like.
Well, and that's what it is. Interestingly, so I don't know what I know. A lot of other people have been doing the same thing that my wife and I do, to try and survive this pandemic and being locked down, which is watching old TV shows. One of our favorite go-tos, for just literally boring ourselves to sleep, is rewatching West Wing over and over again. But if you watched West Wing when it first came out, it was realistic, but there's always this element of fantasy to it. Like the writers were always criticized for how much fantastical stuff they included versus how much reality they included. And then if you compare the timeline of the West Wing storylines to the Trump presidency, there's actually a lot of the fantastical things that happened in West Wing. The things that people said, this could never happen in in real government, actually happened during the Trump presidency, and it's almost like he pulled his playbook from the writers of West Wing. I don't know, but yeah,
that book seems very like it's being made up on the fly, and I hear what you're saying, because I've watched a ton of West Wing, but it does, I mean, it a little bit harkens back to the questions of which are not happening right now because of COVID. But when you run an absurdist theater company, and basically most of the time the shows that you're doing are things that are a reaction to projected where could this go, and then it goes there, you actually are in a post-absurd world where the drama is actually happening, sadly enough, in the car crash ahead of you every day. And then it becomes, how do you comment on that? How do you possibly comment on that? Because you could not, you really couldn't write it that way. But I think the psychological dissonance from that is just so extraordinary for people to try to, it's hard enough to get through the world. And then there's all these, many, many pressing things that need to happen. And it just, like, for the first time, to be able to watch a press conference that was actually a press conference, where questions were taken and answers were given and things were somewhat rational. I mean, that, for me, at least in the last week or week and a half, has been at least somewhat comforting, that like, someone is listening and there's a question and there's an answer, and a reporter is not like, totally made like just like never before have people been spoken to that way. Like the whole to endure all of that. I mean, it's the worst nightmare.
Yeah.
I think on so many levels.
Yeah. And I just constantly question, how long is it going to take us to get somewhere? And I don't want to say normal, because the normal wasn't even good. I want to get to a place where there's a new normal, and that new normal.
Okay, Clark.
Oh.
Sorry.
What happened, Anita?
Sorry,
dramatic development.
Very interesting.
What did Daryl Clark say?
Excuse me. Council President Clark finally actually said something about having. Excuse me. Sorry. I remember Gim speaking. President Clark, for like 2 seconds, was like, "Hey, so as we're talking about like arbitration and how things are like considered, like, I think they were discussing some stuff, and they were asking Richard Laser, I guess, who's in charge of taking care of like grievances and arbitration as like issues come up. So arbitration as far as like discipline and other things within the PPD. And he's like, oh, it's a labor steering committee that consists of like the managing director, the CAO, somebody from finance, the mayor's chief of staff, and the mayor himself sometimes. And sometimes they have meetings with stakeholders. And stakeholders, it's very tricky. It's like, oh, is that different from constituents? Are these people that we're talking about here? Anyway, at some point, President Clark, Council President Clark interrupted and was like, well, I think it would be, useful to actually have the public, the people that you are supposed to serve, actually like also have some stake in like how these things go. I was very surprised based on what little information I know to hear Councilmember Clark say that. So that was cute. That was really cute. All right, other things that I've noticed. Sorry, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I take up some? Great. I think that I believe that the PPD is like putting forth. I think that they're working to see if they can get the police commissioner to have more power to mobilize more of the department as she sees fit within like needs within the city at any given time, without like having like restrictions in her way to like making it easier for her to mobilize more police officers. So that set a bell off for me. Another thing was public safety. So in a lot of like police abolition talk, people have been talking about like, yeah, public safety, like we do the things here, like in our communities, we take care of each other without using force. But for the police, public safety for them means civilianization. So then like having like watchdogs and like policing like each other. So like it's a different version of the conversation, right? Mm-hmm. That they're also like using the exact same language in order to like achieve a different end, which I think is probably a tactic that has been used in the past and that like is probably already in play in some cities. Councilmember Gilmore Richardson thus far has been like holding the banner. I think she's got like a live comment. I think she may have like some live comments running where she's asking questions. And then, oh yes, she said something very interesting. It is a historic day for the people of Philadelphia to be able to like sit down and talk and like have public comment about the police department. And for me, that like, that hits me in a way that's like, yeah, it's a historic day that like finally the people get to speak to the people that are supposed to be there to serve and protect them. I'm like, it shouldn't be a historic day. This should be commonplace.
It should be.
What should be historic is the time when people weren't allowed to be at the table. And then like also, and then also just like getting into the conversation of like, like all of this goes back to like the formations of this country. I've been like side listening. I think that like all of it's incredibly flawed. Like President Trump essentially just like represents like the ills of this country, like taken to like the maximum effect. Like if we don't get under anti-blackness, then we won't be able to get like to the root of white supremacy. And underneath of that, then we have the indigenous people who are being hunted even more than Black people are in percentages. Mm-hmm. We just can't tell. Well, there's less of them now, right?
Right.
But there's not none of them. They are not historic. They are people. They are here. And so it's like, so like that's something interesting. And like, yeah, absolutely. Like it's not the way in which America works. It's not built to be a safe place, but we are meant to think that is the way it is. But that being said, because Indigenous people are not dead, because Black people are not dead, because we still continue to survive, because like all of us still continue to survive, that also means that like, in despite of the fact that there is like a large capitalist white supremacist societal machine at work in the world, we are also building a world in which we continue to survive. And so it's about like making sure that people's voices are heard. Thank you for listening. I'm gonna go back and listen.
Yeah, I'm really
some more.
interested to see what Councilmember Brooks talks about today. She's been
Good.
holding the
It's
banner.
Gim right now,
Yeah,
so I'll keep
I
listening.
hear, I see that. Um, I'm interested to see what Councilmember Brooks does talk about today, though, because she just did a podcast where she talked with Amistad Law Project and a reporter for Amistad Law Project about defund efforts. We have about 9 minutes left in the normal broadcast. I'm actually running out of battery power because I need to go plug in my laptop. Working remotely has its challenges, but I want to just wrap up a little bit and thank you guys for joining us. And encourage folks to watch the live broadcast. I will actually bring that up. Bring up the URL. It is on the City Council's page, and I will share that with all the chats. And just this is your democratic process at work. You need to we need to hold people accountable. We need to pay attention, especially to local politics like this, and understand what's going on, what is being decided on our behalf, and feed back into that system. Talk to your council representatives, find out which ones support the things that you believe in, and communicate with the others that don't believe in the same things that you believe in, and explain to them why they should. If they're truly your representative, represent the things that you believe in. Yeah, so probably going to run out of battery power, which will end the broadcast, and I apologize for that. But wanted to thank you, Anita, and thank you, Tina, for joining us this morning. Anita, I'll jump back on with you after the testimony is over. Maybe we'll cover this in a quick broadcast tomorrow morning or something. I wasn't sure how long the public broadcast the public comment section would last, but obviously it's going to go on for a while.
It's gonna be a minute.
Thank you for joining us again, Tina, and as always, lovely to have you on.
Both. Yeah,
and
thanks for the work you do.
No, thank you. Thank you
Cover it.
for jumping on. And we'll cover the public broadcast throughout the day. And I want to thank real quickly my Patreon subscribers. There's a Patreon for this channel, patreon.com/lightthiefproductions. And please like, subscribe, share it out on your own social media. Feel free to share out the replay of this broadcast, and tune in next week at 10 a.m. and we'll be getting into these subjects again and more. Hopefully we'll have a special guest that I've been waiting for, which is a friend of ours who is recently famous for creating some mailboxes. So tune in next week, and hope to see you then. Thanks everybody for watching, and talk to you next week.
Thank you. Be gentle with yourselves.
Bye. You too.